All right, welcome back to another episode of Culinary Connections Distribution Dialogues, where we dive into the heart of food service distribution across every angle, whether it's brand, chef, distributor. Uh, every one of those people are a key stakeholder in the way that we access food and get food to the table. As a distributor, we need to know how we need to approach selling into different segments, and chefs getting and restaurateurs an opportunity to get under the hood of how distributors think, what's important to them, brands understanding the realities of distribution, but how to communicate to those restaurateurs and chefs. And who we have joining us, Eric Martino. He's the president and founder of Culture Hospitality, has a long lineage of history in the hospitality space. One of my favorite people in the industry. I've had the pleasure of knowing Eric for some time, and we'll dive right in to a couple of things without knowing Eric. Eric, is there one quote that kind of you live by, or that's maybe more inspired you recently that kind of replays in your head right now?
Yeah. Yeah, Ian, first of all, it's likewise, I'm a big fan of yours as well, and just really cherish our relationship and partnership through the years. For me, the motto that I have always lived and died by, it's really two. It's one that you live and die by your people decisions, right? So no matter what you do, and in the restaurant industry or whatever organization you lead or you serve in, whatever you are running is only as good as the people you leave them to. And so you live and die by those people decisions, because you're always, your presence needs to be felt in your absence. That's one of them. Number two is, I always try to seek to understand so I can be understood. I think when there is, if you're a multi-unit leadership, or there's an issue at bay, or there's something going on, I think a lot of multi-unit leaders, at least in the restaurant industry, make the mistake of starting to react to whatever's happening. There's a jam at the door. There's a bottleneck at the service well. Tickets are stacking up. They jump in. Okay, this must be a poorly led operation, or we're just not doing what we need to do to exceed the standards or meet the standards. But I always say, just take a step back, seek to understand so you can be understood. And I think that has always, anytime I start a new relationship with a partner, when I'm going into some sort of fractional work, or I'm starting to as a high level leader in an organization, you have to really have that approach, because you have to earn the right to lead others, and only in doing so can you seek to understand. So then over time you build the emotional equity. That's a Stephen Covey term. You can start to really be understood.
I think one of the challenges that we're faced with in seeking to understand is the life we live in is go, 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 move, 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 and reaction. We react to situations based off of, you get a text message from someone that, number one, or any type of print, it's email, it's not really a letter anymore, but email or a text, where you can't read tone in email, and the way that you react can really cause a ripple effect down the line.
Uh-huh.
And when you're face to face with someone, I mean, bottleneck, maybe you're not getting seated fast enough, right? And what you've done to train that individual to defuse a situation, are there things that people can practice, in your opinion, to help them seek to understand when they do get that text, or that they get the email? Or I mean, I witnessed it this week in Nashville. A couple got their ticket or their bill, and the bartender was really rude to the couple. They were trying to understand why something was on the bill, and he just immediately cut it off, which escalated the situation, right? As opposed to, really understanding the confusion, he really thought that they should understand why it was on the bill.
Yeah. No, I think you just have to process, and really understand the parts and the pieces that are going on, to really be able to react in a way that's going to be meaningful, because otherwise it's just conflict on conflict. Um, I'm, to your point, everything is so reactionary. And in the restaurant industry, we're constantly in a state of reaction. We're either reacting to something that's happened, or we've got a plan. And it's like Mike Tyson's famous quote, everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the face. And in the restaurant industry, you're constantly getting punched in the face, right? It's either, you're taking increases from products, you're taking labor increases from whatever's happening from tip minimum wage, guest complaints, etc. What I always tell our young leaders to do is to think critically, right? And all right, what is my reaction going to do? You mentioned the ripple effect, right? Any time that we react to something is like throwing a stone in the water, right? And what do those ripples affect, and who do they impact? And you don't want to throw one that's so big that it becomes a tsunami, right? It should be a meaningful ripple that really is intentional and can help solve and create a better path forward. So I always just think like, we have to go from playing checkers to chess, right? And all right, before to your example, before I respond to this email, how is it going to be taken? Is this better if I just pick up the phone and have that conversation, right? And then maybe memorialize that conversation with an email, say, hey, Ian, it was great to catch up with you real quick. Here's what we talked about, just so we're aligned or on the same page. I'm just laying out these bullet points so that way next time we can follow up and hold each other accountable. Really great catching up with you. Thanks. Hope you have a great day. Keep crushing it. Whatever it may be. I mean, that is a better way to be able to build, I think, credibility with it, because otherwise you're not approachable and, everything will just be in a state of chaos, right? Because it's just, reaction and a reaction. And now you're in a tennis match and everybody's just trying to slam the ball across the net.
Yeah, I mean, living in an environment, and you have with multiple concepts across the country, time zones, people, upbringings, communication is so key. And as a leader, or even if you're not a leader, you're developing into who you are in your career path. The clearer you can become, the better off you are. And one of my favorite quotes is, to be clear is to be kind, and to be unclear is to be unkind. And because we live in a society where visual messages, text message and email, are just kind of the way that we do things, always start with, hey, Eric, hope you're doing well. Listen, I was seeing if you could help me. I've got the following challenges. Is it possible to get this done by 3 p.m.? Blah, 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 right? As opposed to, Eric, what's going on? Hey, you need to do this by 3, right?
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden the mentality changes in the delivery of what's being received. And it's just, everyone's looking to help one another. You're going to get way less help if it sounds rude, right? So just take a minute to reframe the way that you write your message.
100%. Yeah, I mean, you should always have the mentality of serving whoever you were communicating with, right? If you were a server in a restaurant, you would go up there with a smile, with positivity and a greet, right? There's always this term, like one of my mentors back in is Johnny Carrabba, right? I came up with the Carrabba system. I'm a disciple of it, was with him for 18 years, busboy to managing partner, was a research and development chef for him. And one of the things that Johnny always said is that I can tell if you're smiling on the phone. Always smile on the phone, right? So how do you smile through a text? How do you get that enthusiasm across to your point to where you are in the process of building people up, not tearing them down? Because everyone starts with a full bucket. You go through the day, your bucket gets empty. This negative thing happens. This is a crisis. You got to fix this thing. How do you lift each other up? And when you are associates or your partners or whatever it may be, you're working with somebody, how do you smile through a text? I think is a really great way to do it. I mean, my wife and I talk about it all the time, right? She'll text me, hey, good morning. I travel all the time. Hey, good morning, exclamation mark. And if I reply back, hey, morning, without an exclamation mark, it's, are you okay? What's wrong? So all that matters, and all that is actually dissected as a way of communicating positively that is going to help lift and serve and build each other up.
Yeah, nonverbal, I guess, is the official term. But you grew up in the Carrabba's system. I grew up in Houston. My dad grew up working at Carrabba's, and I remember, and my dad passed away. But Rose Carrabba, that was the Carrabba's on Voss is kind of the upbringing that I had. I remember, either being with my mom when she dropped my dad off. He started as a server, worked up into management, but starched white uniforms. And, still when I go to Houston, maybe once a year, I make it a point to go to Carrabba's, and there are still servers there that know my dad, and they called him El Presidente. And so when I walk in, they still recognize me, and they call me, El Presidente. And so it's I have the Carrabba's cookbook at my house, and looking through the pages, I recognize people. So super cool. But talk a little bit about your journey, where you've been and where you are now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm originally from South Florida. I grew up in a town called West Palm Beach, and you know, I grew up in a very challenged area. Not much money. My father is a furniture refinisher. Mom didn't work. She was kind of in and out of being sick all the time. So I learned what really hard work was at an early age, going to my dad's furniture shop and the smell of lacquer thinner and stripping down everything and sanding and refinishing. And he worked 1,000 hours. He's a small businessman. Um, and I was very inspired by basketball. I got into basketball about 10 years old and became impassioned by it. I played a lot of sports, but fell in love with the game. Nobody in my family ever played the game. But in my neighborhood, everybody was playing basketball all the time, and it was a way to escape sort of my situation where I was at. So I took a love of it. And the reason why I bring that up is because it taught me so many fundamentals, and I got very involved with it, with like AAU and different leagues and all those things. And I had to get a job because I had to pay for this stuff because we didn't have the money to pay for things. So I had to get a job at a young age, at 14, 15 years old. I was working at this small restaurant in North Palm Beach called Dialouges. And it was like the small mom and pop where you'd sit on literally number 10 can tomatoes, and you're rolling pizza dough, 6, 9, and 12-inch doughs with these guys wearing A-frame shirts. They're smoking cigarettes in the back. And it was like that type of atmosphere. And so I learned there. I bust tables making salads, and in the walk-ins they'd lock you in the walk-in and make 50 Caesar salads, make 50 Italian salads, and I'm making all these things. And so I did that for a while, and then I had to move closer to my high school as I got in my high school years because I really wanted to go to this one high school, which is called John I. Leonard. All my friends and buddies were there, and so I had to move closer. So I actually moved in with one of my coaches at the time, and because of where it was in the neighborhood, there was this place called Carrabba's there. It was a brand new restaurant, Palm Beach Lakes Boulevard. And so I decided to go there and fill out an application. I was dating a girl at the time who was getting a ride. She was a host, and her mom would drop us off, and I was a busboy there. And it was so great because Carrabba's was very flexible with my schedule, right? They really believe, it was a great culture. They believed in, school first and making sure that you're flexible to do your activities as long as you showed up on time. And so I just worked there. I was off and on there. And then my journey through there was, I worked there all the way through high school, again, being very flexible because I played football, basketball, and I was in band and did all this other stuff to stay out of trouble, although I still got into trouble. I was there until I was like 18, 19 years old. And then, finished high school, played a couple years at Palm Beach State College, and then decided to, my sister was in Colorado, and I was like, I need to get out of South Florida. I've been there my whole life. I'm on the doorstep of 20 at this time. Like, I just want to get out. And so I decided to go to Colorado, and there was a Carrabba's up there, and I tried out for the Colorado State basketball team there. Practice squad, got hurt. And so I had to fall back on going back to work. So I took time out of school, became a server. There was one in Fort Collins at Carrabba's there. And if you asked anybody what I was going to do at that time, I was like, I'm going to the NBA. That's where I'm going. Well, if you look at it, there's not too many 5'10" Italians in the NBA today, right? Like that just doesn't exist. So my dreams were limited. And when I got hurt, I had to figure out what my next move was. And it was really weird because I was a server one night, and in between her, right, I'm working on the line, I was working apps, and I'm working on the grill, and I was doing these things. So I could do everything in the restaurant because I'd been there so long at this time. I'd been there like 5-6 years at this time. And I remember one night I was waiting. It was a Friday night, 7:30 at night. And I go up to this table, and there's this 2 women and this little boy. And there was a mom and aunt and this little boy, and he was about 6 or 7 years old. So about the age of my son today. And when I went up to the table, I was going up, typical spiel, trying to sell them whatever. And the mom and the son were, signing back and forth. He was hearing impaired. He couldn't hear me. And he was signing to her that he wanted a hamburger. and we didn't have hamburgers at Carrabba's at the time. And so, but I was like, oh, we've got some fresh ground beef and pork in the back of the house. We could probably make you something. And she signed it back with him. And she's like, no, 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 just get him a cheese pizza or chicken fingers. Don't worry about it. Like, don't go to trouble. He'll be fine. And he was like so sad. His body language was just, like depleted. And I'm like, man, that's this kid's sort of, he can't hear. Like, he wants a cheese pizza. He got dragged out here. He wants a cheeseburger. Like, let's get him a cheeseburger. So I go up to the managing partner at the time and I said, hey, Scott, listen, this kid, table 73, his name is Daryl. He wants a cheeseburger. Can we go make him one? He's like, there's no way. We're so busy. He's like, look at the line. He puts his hand on my neck. He shows me the expo line. There's tickets everywhere. And we were in the shits, right? It was crazy. And I don't know if I can curse. Sorry. And
No, you can't.
okay. It was crazy. And he's like, we don't have time to do this. I said, I'll go make it. He said, no, you can't. And one at the time at Carrabba's, you probably know this, there was 3 commitments. One of them was anything goes. So it was like, do whatever it takes for the guest, right? So I threw that in his face. I'm like, Scott, what about our commitment to customers? Anything goes. He's like, not now. So it's selective, right? I said, your values are only as good as the time that you're in stress mode, right? And so I said, listen, Scott, there is a McDonald's down the street. Let me just run over there and get this kid a hamburger and cheeseburger. Like, let me go do it. And I'll grab it. I'll come back. You wait my tables. Here's my apron. And let me do it. And he's like, I'm not doing that. There's no way. I said, you know what? Then I'm walking out. That's it. And I'm going to go get the kid a hamburger and cheeseburger. So you can either keep me here or I'm going to go and I'm going to walk. But no matter what, I'm going to get this kid what he wants. I was like really like compelled. Something in my heart was like, get this kid what he wants. And so he said, all right, go ahead and do it. So I went to McDonald's, got the hamburger and cheeseburger, brought it out there underneath the expo light. It's like McDonald's has those like yellow and orange crinkly papers, brought it out on the plate, and ran it out to the table. And when I brought out the table, the look on this kid's face was like the best thing I ever seen. He was just blown away. Not only was it like a hamburger cheeseburger, it was like McDonald's, right? And the mom, she started crying. The aunt was like carrying on. And she's like, I don't understand. Why would you, this is crazy. Why would you do this? Like, why? And I said, why wouldn't I? If you are in, and I said this to her, if you're in my life for an hour and a half, I want to make to be the best hour and a half possible. And she said, this was incredible. Like, thank you so much. And I went home and I realized, like, when your heart and your head's aligned, you go, this is what you should be doing the rest of your life. I knew that I wanted to give for the sake of giving rather than the sake of gaining, right? This was what I wanted to do. And I said, if I could do this in a 3-table section and make people feel that way, what could I do if one day, if I was grateful enough and blessed enough to have a whole restaurant to myself and create a culture of people that were aligned, that felt the same way I did, we could really make an impact in the community. And then if I could run a restaurant company one day with that same idea and that same ideal and that North Star of making Daryl feel the way I was able to make him feel with those 45 minutes, an hour and a half that he was in my life, and his mom and his aunt, man, we could really make a difference in this world. And so I looked at that time as like, I don't want to do anything else. I'm hooked. I want to make people feel this way. And as I've evolved in my career, it's been that direct, but it's also empowering and coaching and teaching, developing others to feel that same way and making the employees feel that same way. So, I say that because from there I became a kitchen manager. Carrabba's at the time, they grew up a bunch of restaurants in the Midwest. So I transferred out to the Midwest and became an opening manager. My journey there was, I was a research and development chef and food tech for them for a while. So basically focusing on the back of house operations for all the restaurants in the company. And then we were opening restaurants all the time. So I was doing that. Fast forward, I became a managing partner of one of the restaurants. I did 7 years at a 5-year term. Took one over in Kansas City when I was there for a little bit because that's where we moved. And then got transferred to the one in Nashville. And that's where I got to Nashville, where I took over the one in the Green Hills Mall and had a great run there for 5 years. Took it from like 2.6 million to I think it was 5.4 when I left. Had a great team. I mean, it's so crazy. And like, this is the only restaurant team that I know of that like literally has yearly reunions. Like we all try to get together. The team was so tight. And it was such a fun group to be with. And, the great thing about those times in the Carrabba's days was that it was very entrepreneurial. Like whatever you hunted and killed, you ate, right? And so you driving revenues, creating revenue streams, driving a great culture. You really were rewarded for it, not only financially, but from the cultural standpoint, you were highlighted for it, which was great. I did that for about eight. After all, I was at Crowds for 18 years. Make a long story short, there was this restaurant that was in the neighborhood called Virago, and a lot of my servers and colleagues and stuff like, hey, you got to check this place out. Like, you love sushi, you got to check this place out. And so I went there, had a great experience, and I was like blown away by, like, man, this is great. Like, the restaurant was sexy, right? It had that feel, that design. Like, it was different from the big box restaurants that I came from. Like, this Carrabba's isn't sexy. Like, let's just not get ourselves. Like, the food is incredible, consistent. It was amazing. But where Carrabba's was going at the time too, where like stuff was coming in frozen and shit just wasn't what it used to be. I was like, I need to go do something else. And you need to make a career move, because you don't want to be typecast as this big box operator. I knew I want to do this the rest of my life. So how can I move my cheese, right? Like, what does that look like? So I'm blown away by this experience. Incredible. Service was amazing. Drinks were just impressionable. The food was memorable. And I'm like, man, this is fun. So I was like, I wonder what's going on. So I sent him an email, a letter one night, and to like the HR, like whatever line. And I got a response that, hey, we'd be interested in talking with you. And, through several conversations, I was able to come on as the director of operations and working with Chris Hyman, who is still a good friend of mine. Taught me a lot about design, about the art, about ambiance, about the look and feel of those restaurants. And we were off and running. I mean, about, what M Street was to Nashville at that time. And he just had 3 restaurants at the time, and we grew it to, I helped him create Moto, and, was involved in St. Neho and the Rose Wall, and Whiskey Kitchen was great. Cane Prime was incredible, backed by Robbie Wilson, who was the culinary director at the time. And then Andrew Whitney came on, and we had this incredible cast of characters. So there for 5 or 6 years, and really just came to appreciate the independent side of the restaurant world because of what it was, right? So helped them structure it, put it together, and was there for about 6 years, and decided, hey, what's next? I want to grow. You get comfortable, right? What's next? And then that's when I ended up moving out to DC with Jose Andres, and running his operations, and was there for about 7 years. And then recently became president of Minas Group, and in between founded this incredible company, which I'm excited about, called Culture Hospitality Group.
What a ride that is,
Yeah.
Condensed into that.
Yeah.
You talk about driving culture,
Yeah.
and I think, man, in hospitality, it can be a real challenge. You've got language barriers, you've got time differences of when, employees come in. You're operating essentially 7 days a week. How do you, and sometimes you don't have the money to really, like, if you're an independent restaurant, right? Like, you don't have the money to incentivize people. How can you incentivize? Like, how can you nurture people?
Yeah. It's a great question. You've got to be in a constant state of development. Like, I think career pathing is really crucial. I think that the groups, if the independent restaurant groups that can do this well, show them that there's a clear path, and this is what you need to do to get there, and you take an interest in their development, I think are the companies that are going to stand the test of time. I think there's 3 levels and classifications in the restaurant industry. I think and this is just for anybody, you could say this is back of the house and front of the house. You've got managers, that's a group. You've got operators, that's another group, which is, a higher level. And then at the pinnacle, you've got restaurateurs. And I think between those 3 levels, there's a lot of curriculum and development that needs to happen between each one. So from manager to operator, restaurateur. And how I've broken it down is 4 quadrants, which is basically the development of getting between those tiers. And it's buckets that's an administrative, ambassadorship, product expert, and leadership. And I feel like those 4 buckets, and there's a lot to unpack there, because at each level, there's specific curriculum that I have worked with my people and said, hey, listen, you are right here in the administrative quadrant as a manager. To get to be an operator, you need to be better with financial acumen or business acumen, which a lot of our managers and operators today just don't know how to do. They don't know how to look at a P&L. They don't know what GL stands for. There is so much there that I think is important, that folks that owners that have these restaurant groups, they're not taking the time, and they're giving the keys to the castle of these 12, 14, 10, 9, 8, help $4, $5 million businesses that don't even know what P&L stands for. And it's not to any discredit. It's just because of the lack of curriculum and focus on, to your point, career pathing. And so you have to be very clear on the onboarding process, assimilating, understanding, again, where these people are at in their journey as a manager, operator, restaurateur, and really know what levers to pull, and within those 4 quadrants of what to give them as a development plan to be better.
There's so much individually that we need to receive from work, just our general environment. Part of that is being motivated or staying encouraged. And often the most simple things you can do as a leader or a manager is appreciate, say thank you, recognize, but you don't do it. What have you seen successful companies do to really prioritize, and recognize the need to say thank you, to do call outs? Like, what are some simple things companies can do regardless of the business?
Yeah, no, I think, a lot of that's got to be driven and should be driven by the unit level leadership, right? And how they do it. And I think at pre-shift is a great time to do that. I think I've worked with some organizations and done it myself, to where at pre-shift, where you've got everybody, or your huddle up, you got everybody standing there. If you open up at 5 o'clock, it's 4:15, and you start with recognizing top performers. And then, you select a team member to give somebody else a compliment. Hey, I want to recognize Ian today. He was great behind the bar, man. Drinks were coming out like fire on time. Really appreciate him. Ian, thank you so much. And then, who do you want to pay it forward to, Ian? And now you're saying it to somebody else. That's always a really great way to get encouragement, positivity started before you start your shift. Another thing is that I've done, if you're a multi-level leader or just a leader in general. I mean, when you do your weekly recaps, all right, your manager meetings, that's the time to put it out in print and memorialize it. Hey guys, here's where we're heading. Really appreciate, Ian for making this happen. He really, came through for us on this one. Great shift notes, way to really, make sure that, we were under labor and we exceeded sales, and you booked this event. Awesome job, whatever it may be. I think those are simple things that go a long way, because to your point, people get busy and they get overlooked, and everybody wants to look for the bad as opposed to recognize the good. And that's a big problem in the industry. I also say, hey, I in my mind, because the business is so chaotic, I've had to simplify it. So you hear me saying these 4 things or these 3 things. I really have boiled down to communication in these 3 things, to be completely honest. And anytime that I write an email or communicate to the team, if it's a WhatsApp message, if it's on Teams, if it's something, whatever it is, I try to encapsulate these 3 things, and it's to inform them of what's going on, right? How are things happening? Who's coming in tonight? What are we doing? What is the goal, right? And what does success look like? Then I educate them. All right, this is why we're doing it. This is what this means. This is what we're putting together. This is the product that we're putting on the plate. This is giving you the knowledge, so that way you can feel confident, so that way you can be the salesperson. So you inform them, you educate them, and then lastly, you inspire them. This is the why behind we're doing it. And this is how it's going to impact and affect you monetarily. And it's also going to impact, sales and ultimately the guest experience. If you, in the body of your email, you encapsulate those 3 fragments to where you are informing, educating, inspiring, you're hitting on really 3 strong phases of communication that is really going to lift a line. Because ultimately, as leaders, we're there to align the troops, focus them in on the target, use the word clarity, give them clarity, but you do that through informing, educating, and inspiring.
Hugely important. And in your business, your team is your family. And in family, there's going to be disagreements. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to step on people's toes. It's not all butterflies and rainbows. So, we shouldn't take things personally. We get heated, come back to the table and say, hey, I was out of line, whatever it may be. That approach to inform, to educate, to inspire, something that I will take into what we're looking to build. Because now Katie and my wife Katie and I are building our business with two others right now, and hopefully more. And we're small, but it's easy to get hot headed or frustrated. But as you progress, you have to put a leadership hat on and try to filter things, right? Like, be a coffee filter, right? Like, it's your responsibility to be that coffee filter and have a nice cup of coffee ready for the people around you, because you've got maybe people that didn't grow up a certain way, right? They have to be communicated completely different. And it's not just inherently in people to understand your position, that you're so self-motivated. Other people are not self-motivated, right? And the way that we communicate can tear people down and not help you get to the same mission. So thinking about when you do message, to inform, to educate, and to inspire, if you do those components, all of a sudden it transforms the delivery of that message.
Yep.
What have you found is like really good ways for, again, you're different and you fuel yourself between the ears completely different, but what are ways that people can get inspired so that they can inspire others? As a leader, if you're at the top, like, who's sharpening you? Right. And that's often a huge thing that I tell people is like, you're responsible for sharpening others. You got to make sure that you're staying sharp.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great question. I think, yeah, it is. It can be definitely lonely at the top. You got to look for key mentors. I think I've leaned on past relationships that I've had. Obviously, people that I've worked with, former CEOs. Hell, I mean, I get inspired by you, Ian. Having to pick up and having a conversation with a colleague. Especially in the entrepreneurial world, as you know, 1 minute you're up, the next minute you're down. How do you stay level? I think you need to lean in to people out there, and you learn from them. Outside of that, I can't say, leaders are readers and readers are leaders. Whether you listen to the book, I'm a listener. I don't work out. I don't even listen to music anymore. I'm literally listening to a podcast, or I'm listening to an Audible, feeling my brain as I am, because I think your mind brain will connect. So whether I'm on a run or anything, it's a great way to meditate, but it's a great way to get inspired, because there's always some great nuggets out there that you can take and make it applicable to your business, and edit it and audit to a message that is going to be applicable to your people that you lead and you serve. Because it really, your point, like, people are depending on you, right? Just like as a parent, I have 3 children, husband to an amazing woman. I want to continue to be the best I can for them. So I look for ways to be able to be a great father, to be a great husband. What do those things look like? I'm always working to improve myself for them. It's the same thing for our people. You got to figure out ways to improve yourself with it. And it's, I always say, like, to fill others' buckets, you got to fill your own. And to do that, you just got to find things that are out there that will inspire you and educate you and inform you. And I think, books are a great way of doing that. Articles, knowing what's going on in your trades, being, up to date on all those things, so you know what's going on and you're informed of your business. I'm reading a lot about scaling up, because, I want to, understand how to scale my business, or, or if I'm part of another business, how to really scale and multiply it and do it in a way that's meaningful, without killing the cash still. Right. And so, and not make some mistakes that some other companies and CEOs maybe have in the past. So, I think all that is important, and it's really incumbent upon us as leaders to continue to do that.
You've had the opportunity to look through the lenses of what we would call corporate chain business,
Mm-hmm.
Small, independent, localized city restaurant group, and now, having really maybe global restaurant group. And within that, you're working with chefs to produce really high quality products, and those restaurants are all viewed within the distribution world as like, how do I get in? I want to work with this, this group. What are conversations like in, with chefs, or now when you get to that level of a Think or Michael Mina, it's CFO, it is director of culinary. What are the talks at the table that are important for distributors to really recognize that we need to meet the needs of these individuals in order to have an opportunity to serve them?
Yeah. I think it's quality, it's consistency, and in its broad brand distribution. I think it's, hey, okay, this product is great. Can you get it to me consistently? Can I have it all the time? And then is it going to be able to replace what we're already doing? Like if you take, for instance, if you take a French fry, right? A lot of chefs would rather cut their own French fry. Just make an example, but there are really great IQF options out there. And I would argue, do we need to spend time and labor peeling and making French fries when there's really great products out there? So I think it's, being relentless. I think a lot of that is a relationship, right? Understanding about, hey, this product can really do this for us. And it also can offset these costs because, restaurants are always looking out for their margins as well. But in chef driven groups, it's always going to be quality ahead of cost. It's always going to be. Honestly, at the end of the day, it can, it's guys like me that are trying to balance the two and say, okay, hey, this is good, but does it meet our food cost needs? Because, as you know, tip minimum wage is going up, everything else is going up. And one thing we don't want to lose in our restaurant groups and from the experience is the quality. So it's really making sure that that quality can be met. And then, a lot of it is just relationship driven, right? It's got to be a true partnership, knowing that, there is really great synergies there, and it can really meet the demands of some of these groups from a quality and cost standpoint.
The social media effect has impacted every business.
Yeah.
Now, when I look at restaurant design, when you're looking at putting a concept in. I had dinner on Monday with a culinary director of a group that oversees 18 hotels and resorts, and we were at a restaurant, and they did a really cool baked Alaska that they came and
Yeah.
there was action to it, right? They did a great tableside dessert. The ambiance was on point. Do you feel, and you talked about Virago being a sexy restaurant, right? How much of, like, whether it's from the menu or, the neon in the back, like, is the Instagram effect super important in designing menu and restaurant today?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's the way that people get to know what your restaurant is. Like one of my favorite restaurants is Catch, at Aria Hotel. Love it. The ambiance is incredible. The design is amazing. The food is great, right? Always great energy. They get it right. And on the way, if you've been there,
Mm-hmm.
so obviously that flower hallway, and everybody's just taking pictures left and right, and so that's important because that's your branding, right? That's how your branding is getting out there. That's the word of mouth, and so all of that is incredibly important and has to be intentional when designing the restaurants. We're designing a restaurant in Bourbon, Las Vegas, in the Four Seasons, and that when we're designing it, that's the intention is, all right, where is that Instagram moment going to be? Right. I opened up a restaurant with Culture Hospitality Group in Wilmington. And to your point, this neon, it was like, okay, we did this incredible rendering of this awesome sugar skull guy, Humidor, harvesting agave. It's this Mexican restaurant. It's great, called Tequila's the Waterfront. And it was like, all right, we know that that's where people are going to take a picture. They're going to do a selfie there because that's a cool piece of art. So all that stuff is incredibly important. And then to the other side of it, like your baked Alaska moment, as a restaurateur, you need to be thinking, all right, what are those moments where people are going to pull up their phone and they're going to start taking a picture and videoing it and hashtagging your restaurant, and then you're going to recycle that content and put it on your channels, and then that's going to be out there in the atmosphere. So you need to be intentional about, okay, what things are going to get people's attention table side as well. So I could show off my product, I could show off the service, I can show off the ambiance, all those components within this call it 6, 7 second snippet, that people are going to go, that's where I want to go tonight. I'm going to go there. I want to have my celebration. I'm going to go dine there tonight. So all of that, from design to menu engineering to tableside engagements to service, is all intentional, because that's the best way to market your brand in your restaurant these days. 100%.
Do you feel like, again, M Street was, I mean, in my opinion, at the forefront of that kind of
Sure.
thought pattern. But was that talked about? Was that relevant when you guys were designing those concepts at the time, or was it just kind of like, we just want a really beautiful spot?
Yeah, it started to become, because I think it was, I mean, this is, God, I mean, how long ago was that? 10, 12 years ago. It was a long time ago. I think it was doing it for the sake of doing it, because that's how we were going to, box out the competition. And I think driving that memorable experience, was an exceptional experience, was always the top of mind. And then, everything kind of flowed secondary, because it was like, oh, well, look at the byproduct of doing this. We're getting a lot of this backside media credit. Now it's all strategic. It's like, all right, what is going to get us the backside media credit of this menu or this design? How are we going to get all that stuff? And also, now it's an influencer game, right? It's like, you're hiring these influencers to come in and experience a restaurant, and a lot of them do an incredible job of really broadcasting out there. But when you are putting together your restaurant plan and your marketing plan, that is 100% a part of the strategy. When you're sitting at the table, is like, all right, how is this going to look on Instagram? How is this going to look, especially in major markets like a Vegas or a Miami or a New York, when you're going to have a lot of tourism? you know those things are going to float around in algorithms, and those algorithms that are floating around out there, it's people that are going to travel and hopefully pick your destination to come down and experience it. So yeah, absolutely. So back in the day, it was like, yeah, okay, and then like everything was a byproduct. Now it's all about, all right, what's going to get us the most attention, for sure, because that's the game now.
Well, I'm going to state this. There's going to be an episode 2 with Eric, because there's way too much to talk about. But as we wrap up here, give us a kind of your thoughts on the state of the industry right now versus where it was, pre-COVID. What's changed? What are the mindsets of operators, and just kind of what you're seeing?
It depends on what market you're speaking of. Some markets are more favorable than others. I think in markets like Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, I think are a little bit more favorable than markets like California, Seattle, New York. I mean, I think, with depending on where you stand on the tip minimum wage conversation, and that is a conversation for another time. It's difficult right now. I mean, things are marginally hard on the operators and the customers. I mean, what you used to spend, if you and I went out, we would spend $55, $60 a person on, is now $110, $120. I mean, you can't go out to dinner for anything less than that per person if you want to go to a quality restaurant. Otherwise, you're in the sector of quick casual, and you're not in this full service dining aspect. And I think the rising cost of commodities, obviously labor, supply, demand. I think the supply chain is getting better. You know more about this than anyone. But I'd say that the restaurant industry is challenged more than ever, just because of there is still a lack of talent. And what I mean by that is there's still people not coming back to work in restaurants. They still have left the industry wholeheartedly. Or if they're there, it's just they're not being developed because of all the battlefield promotions. And so there's a lot of noise right now in the industry that I think is going to take some time to sort out. I think politically, like getting a restaurant relief bill again is going to be important for the industry, because we're taking such a hike on labor increases. And I think there's some good rent deferral, and landlords, have to get, paid. But a lot of the restaurants that are operating in metropolitan cities, something's got to happen. We got to get people back to work in offices, because these restaurants are going to continue to keep getting boarded up. People are going to have to vacate. Jobs are going to be lost because operators can't sustain the hike in labor right now. I mean, tip minimum wage right now going to 16.25. Right now, I think is good for a livable wage, but servers were already making 35, $40 an hour. And so I think the goal needs to be, as an industry, how do you make wage equality happen between back and front, so that way that dishwasher's making the same as the front of the house, right? That's what I want to see happen. I think that's where we need to go, because those guys are working tremendously hard. So there's a lot to unpack there. I think I think it is challenging in some sectors, and I think this year is going to be one of the toughest probably for the industry outside of COVID, because of everything that's happening right now.
And as we leave, that's kind of I don't want to say it's a dark spot. It's a reality of where the industry is.
Yeah.
But for those people that are looking to advance in their career, maybe they're not happy where they are. What would what little tidbit would you leave someone with to, kind of inspire, encourage to find that happiness and chase the dream?
Yeah, I think you got to look and edit and audit your life. Where do you want to go? And I think wherever that is, wherever your heart and your head is aligned, whatever makes you happy, whatever gets you enthusiastic. And, I say, and this is what I've had to do in my career is just write everything out on a piece of paper. All right. And then what are the things that your job really is responsible for, aside from the things that make you happy? And maybe a lot of those things convert, right? Maybe they're together. Maybe some of them are apart. Whatever those are, write those traits down and see if you can't create a career that is going to be fulfillment from you from a personal perspective, that's going to fill your bucket that way. And then how can you monetize that as well? If it's career trajectory within the industry, there's a lot of great groups that do that. Me and a group, nobody's better at career pathing, right? There's a really good career pathing there. There's great advocates and some of these groups that'll really take an interest in really growing and developing others. But I think you just got to take a look and take stock and go, okay, what am I getting out of this? Where is it though I want to go? And then just make a plan and start moving. Everybody does it every day. I think you don't have to settle for being miserable in your job. You can decide, hey, this is what I want to do, and go after it and get it. And there's 1,000 inspiring stories out there like it. You just got to have the courage to say, hey, you know what? This isn't enough for me. This is what's important to me. Here's how I'm going to go get it. Here's my plan. And then here's what this success looks like. Here's my plan of action to start at step one, and then one foot in front of the other.
Motion creates action. Action creates results. And if you're not inspired by Eric Martino, you're crazy. I want to go freaking run on a football field.
Let's go.
Where can people find you right now? How can they get a hold of you, research you?
Yeah, culturehospitalitygroup.com is my website. And I do executive coaching as well as fractional work, consulting, and management work as well. There's all kinds of things that I can help operators, restaurateurs, and chefs get into. You can find me on LinkedIn, Eric Martino, also Culture Hospitality Group on LinkedIn. And then obviously I have my Instagram, just Eric Martino. And then we also have a Culture Hospitality Group handle there as well. But yeah, that's where you can find me and DM me, and happy to be part of your journey.
One of my favorite people, Eric, thanks for jumping on. And I'm going to get with you about part 2, because we didn't even get through like 20% of what we wanted to talk about. So thanks for jumping on, and check Eric out on social media.
All right, brother. Thanks, Ian. To the top, man.
Thanks.
Take care, bud.